Welcome to my YouTube watercolour channel. I'm Karen Rice and thank you for tuning in. I'm going to be painting a step-by-step watercolour painting of some wildflowers in the landscape. What's going to be different is I'm not going to be painting lots of wet in wet. As you know, a lot of you followed my tutorials. I do paint a lot of wet in wet, but someone asked me recently they had trouble painting wet on wet, so I've decided to do this tutorial all wet on dry. So shall we get started? So here are all the colours I'm going to be using. Don't worry if you haven't got these brands. Any brand that you have will do. I'm using Indigo, Ultramarine, Yellow Ochre, Cadmium Yellow, Permanent Rose and Transparent Brown Oxide. In the description below I will give you some alternatives to these colours. To get to the description, just click Show More to the left or the little down arrow on the right if you're using tablets. And in the description you will find a list of all the materials I'm using and the Amazon links if you wish to purchase any of them. I've got my black velvet brushes, which I absolutely adore. I'm going to use a selection of these. I've got a size 14, 10, 6, 4 and 2, but I may not use all of those, but I just love these brushes. They've got beautiful points and they hold lots of paint. I'm also going to be using some masking fluid. I'm actually going to be using the masking pens. I've got the 0.7mm and the 4mm masking pens, but you could just use masking fluid out of a pot. I will also be using my TWIG, bit of plastic card and an HB pencil. I'm using watercolour paper that's 9 by 12 inches. It's a hot press surface and it's a block pad, and I use these pads because they stop the paper from warping and buckling. If you would like to see the drawing of this tutorial and a longer, more informative demonstration, why not think about joining my Patreon channel membership? Just click the link in the description below. It is almost identical to my YouTube channel membership, but it's very useful to those of you that have iPads or other tablets and devices. If you have any questions regarding the membership, please put them in the comments section below and I will get back to you as soon as I can. So I've made a little puddle of the indigo and I'm working wet on dry, starting at the top and then making that wash slightly lighter by diluting my brush down to the horizon so that it's darker at the top. And now I'm putting a little bit of the yellow ochre, as you see from the reference photograph, that lovely light bit of yellow grasses, wet on dry in that area of the painting. If you don't have yellow ochre, you could use raw sienna. I'm actually now adding a little bit of the transparent brown oxide. You could use burnt sienna if you don't have this colour, and I actually did drop that a little bit wet in wet, sorry about that, but it's a very small amount and I'm just painting that in just at the base there just to warm that up slightly. Now I'm just dropping in a little bit of the darker colour now. That's the indigo with the transparent brown oxide. Just mixed up a little bit of the ultramarine and the cadmium yellow, quite a watery pale wash, and I'm just now painting wet on dry this lovely shade in the grasses area where the wildflowers are. Make sure your masking fluid is dry when you do this. I'm using my size 10 brush and I'm really sort of loading the brush each time. Make sure you've got plenty of paint. And I'm just painting this down towards the foreground, towards the bottom of the painting. Really just load your brush each time. The consistency is milky, so it's not too watery. And as you can see, it's a little bit stronger in the foreground. I've just added a touch more yellow, touch of blue, just to create some darker greens in the foreground. Mixing colours as I go, which obviously isn't easy for beginners, so what I would suggest is watching this video through once and then mixing up your colours, the colours that you need to mix, so you're fully prepared, so it's not too daunting. I've added a little bit of the brown to my green just to make a nice dark green, and the consistency is creamy, and obviously this is a little bit of wet in wet here. One of the things that attracted me about this reference photograph was that lovely dark on the horizon. So I'm using some indigo just on its own here and just painting it wet on dry for these distant trees. And I'm using my size 6 brush and I'm just painting this, sort of just cutting into some of those yellowy grasses just underneath to create some texture and details as well. As you saw there, I just got some water onto my brush so I can dilute the paint a little. It's just to vary the tones and to create a little bit of light and a little bit more detail and information in this area. I'm just now painting the tree trunk. I'm using my size 6 round brush and I'm using indigo and I'm painting this wet on dry. So I'm using a sponge now, it's a natural sponge, and I've just mixed up some creamy light green and I'm just sponging the bush to the left there, and now I've made the green slightly darker, make sure it's nice and creamy, and I'm actually sponging this wet on wet, just painting or sponging rather the darker tones in the bush. I'm doing exactly the same thing to the tree behind. I put a lighter shade on and then a darker shade using the indigo and the yellow. I'm just using the size 4 round brush now just to put a few little loose leaves on the edge of this tree and putting a little bit more dark on the bottom of that bush. It's kind of damping to damp this, so make sure your paint is quite creamy. I'm now painting some of the darks at the bottom of those light grasses as you see in the photograph, and I'm using the brown with the indigo. This is wet on dry and I'm painting this using my size 4 brush. Once you finish the darks, you can now paint some of the grasses, again wet on dry. I'm just using the Ultramarine with the yellow, it's a limey light green. I'm using the tip of the brush to create these grasses effects. This is a fun bit. I've just made a puddle of dark green using the indigo and some yellow, and I'm using my twig to paint lots of thin grasses. And I'm just giving it a little spatter now using that same dark green just around the foreground, just to give lots and lots of texture, because there's so much going on in this photograph and I really want to sort of show this by using all these lovely different techniques you can use in watercolour painting. So I've removed all of the masking fluid and everything is dry. And now I'm painting wet on dry with the size 4 brush, and I'm using permanent rose, but you could use ochre rose or any pink will do. And I'm painting this large flower in the foreground. In the photograph it's quite blurry, but I've decided to give it a little bit more information. But you can just vary the sort of lights and darks by putting creamier paint in or adding water to make it look lighter. What I'm going to do is continue painting each of these flowers, and there's lots to do, but it's such good fun. It's very therapeutic, and I'm going to be using some of the ultramarine mixed with the pink to make some of the purpley sort of colours, and the pink mixed with the yellow to create the centres for the daisies. I'm just finishing off some of the centres now, and I'm painting in some just sort of neutral colours. I've used a little bit of the purple colour mixed with the yellow to create a tiny touch of detail in the daisies. And now I'm using my twig and I'm painting some of the stems on the larger flowers. Just have fun with it, just put lots of detail in, it's so nice. I'm using the size 4 brush now to create some more detail here, using indigo and yellow for this plant that's sort of on the right hand side there. And I'm going to put a little bit more darks now in the grasses here and there, wet on dry. Decided to put a branch on this tree only to lead your eye into the center of the picture, and I'm using my size 2 brush and I'm using indigo, and it's a milky wash, and it just gives that little bit of detail and it kind of balances the painting. And I'm using a dark green now just to create some little leaves on the branches to finish off. I've removed my framing tape and I think I'll leave it there for now. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. I really hope it's helped you, especially because I've painted less wet on wet, lots more wet on dry. If you'd like to see more tutorials like this, why not subscribe to my YouTube channel where you'll get updates of my latest videos. But if you'd like to see longer, more informative videos with lots of tips and techniques, why not think about joining my Patreon watercolour channel? Just click on the link in the description below. Thank you again so much for watching this tutorial. Happy painting. Bye for now.